Today, we're talking about this monster cop who got revenge on his ex by having her involuntarily committed. We just learned how overwhelmingly powerful Mr. Beast is now. The Writers Guild scored absolutely massive game-changing wins. Poland's trying to extradite that Nazi that Canada honored in its parliament. We deep dive into how horrible soldier living conditions have gotten. We've got wild looting in Philly. We're talking about all that and so much more on today's extra-large Philip DeFranco show. You daily dive into the news, so just make sure you're subscribed and let's jump into it. Starting with, imagine you're hanging out in a state park at a picnic area when suddenly your crazy, controlling ex-boyfriend shows up and tackles you to the ground. Because that's exactly what happened to this woman in Pennsylvania who had an ex, Ronald Davis, whom she dated for 4 months, who happened to be a state trooper. With him reportedly, while off duty, using his police email account to contact county officials and obtain an order to have her involuntarily committed. And this after she had sent text messages supposedly threatening to take her own life. So in a completely professional, disinterested fashion, he sets out to detain her before any other troopers reach her, allegedly telling them, "I'll take care of this myself." Then, according to an affidavit, he picks her up and carries her towards his car, but they end up struggling on the ground. And actually with this, a civilian who accompanied Davis recorded this 12-minute long interaction.
I don't need help. I just need to get away from you. This isn't normal. You just called the cops on me. You're a cop. You're insane. Like, and then you paint me to look insane as I'm sitting on the ground with my head slammed into this and that. By a cop who called the cops on me.
She then struggles to get free, but he puts her in what the district attorney called a wrestling-style hold, and she repeatedly tells him she can't breathe. Meanwhile, she appears utterly bewildered as to why he's doing this, and anytime she asks, he just replies, "To help you," with her repeating this one sentence over and over, literally dozens of times.
I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong.
And according to the DA, the physical struggle resulted in injuries to her forehead, torso, back, arms, and lower body. But eventually, the uniformed officers arrived, they put her in a vehicle, and they cart her off to a mental hospital, where she is then trapped for 5 days, with eventually the medical staff determining she was okay to be released, and that was that. Except not really, because here's the thing. When she finally got out, the police interviewed her and took a look at the text messages in which she supposedly threatened to take her own life. And surprise, surprise, the messages actually appear to be hypothetical in nature and part of a larger argument over their deteriorating relationship. Or, as the DA put it, taken in context, the text revealed her frustration with Trooper Davis and his controlling behavior, not a true desire to harm herself. And in addition to that, she told police that Davis actually said to her, "I know you're not crazy, I'll paint you as crazy," prior to having her committed. And so now the tables have turned because Davis has now been arrested on several charges, including strangulation, assault, and false imprisonment. And then Mr. Beast is even more successful than you thought he was. So my spidey senses are saying that even what we're going to talk about today, it only scratches the surface of how big he is and is going to be. And I say that because Forbes just put out its top creators of 2023 list, and he was on the top by a landslide, which is really saying something because they noted the 50 creators on this list harnessed their combined 2.6 billion followers to haul in an estimated $700 million in earnings, which is notably up more than 20% from 2022's $570 million. And this is brands are expected to spend a whopping $21 billion in creator marketing this year, which is why you had Forbes adding that these people are calling the shots in entertainment and advertising, and perhaps no one has more power on that front than Mr. Beast, with Forbes reporting he had $82 million in earnings this year, which again, I'm talking out of my ass here, it feels like it could be an undercount. I mean, not only the videos and the sponsorships, he has the clothing, he had, well, the Mr. Beast burger thing is really messy right now, but he has a chocolate company. And the size of this guy's audience is something we very rarely have seen. Like, the guy's allergic to putting out videos that get less than 100 million views on his main channel, and it's really not a publicly known thing how many things Mr. Beast has his hands in. I mean, y'all, even look at the article itself. Forbes had to include a disclosure when talking about Mr. Beast, saying, hey, he's also slated to be a member of the Forbes board when a planned sale of the company is completed. It's insane. He's everywhere. You know, even with that $84 million estimate, that was more than double any other creator on the list. In terms of estimated earnings behind him, you had Rhett and Link, Plays, and Lions World, with them coming in at $35 million each, although the Forbes list wasn't just about money, it also included other things like follower count, engagement levels, and more. It's actually why you had KSI in second place, $1 million in estimated earnings, followed by like Jake Paul, Charlie D'Amelio, and Logan Paul. You also have people like Matt Rife in the top 10, which I mean, I haven't seen a come up in stand-up comedy like his in a long time. That's just barely scratching the surface, but this also includes a slew of other big names like Bella Poarch, Markiplier, Alex Cooper, Kai Cenat. If you're interested, I definitely recommend checking out the list because it really captures just a wide array of movies. There's so many touching on so many different spheres and businesses. And then you gotta talk about what happened in Philadelphia yesterday. Because last night, a large crowd of people gathered in Philadelphia's center city, and some of them began looting stores and damaging property, with videos showing people running in and out of an Apple store, then nearby Foot Locker and Lululemon. That looting reportedly beginning shortly after the end of a peaceful protest during the judge dismissed charges against the cop who shot and killed 27-year-old Eddie Irizarry. However, the interim police commissioner, John Finn, said the police do not believe the protest, instead saying, "What we had tonight was a bunch of criminal opportunists take advantage of a situation and make an attempt to destroy our city." The protest near City Hall in the Center City area wrapped up around 7:30 p.m., and then police reportedly started receiving reports of stores being broken into around 8. The problems were also not completely less seconds. The looting reportedly extended to the city's Clouds Creek area at one business, and one field had a car slammed into their building. Police reported a caravan of vehicles going from location to location, spreading the looting further throughout the city. And as of this morning, police were still unsure how many businesses were affected by the looting last night, but at least 20 arrests have been made so far. Also this morning, you saw Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney thanking police for their work overnight, saying this was a sickening display of opportunistic criminal activity, and we will not stand for it. With investigators still looking for others involved in looting, saying we made arrests and we will continue to make arrests until we have all of the individuals or a number of the individuals that have been responsible for what we've seen tonight in custody. And then the writer's strike is officially over, and I imagine no one is happier than the wives of my writer friends. And by that, I mean the one. I'm talking about you, Mike. You're a lot to deal with, and 148 days is a lot of days. But for every one of those days, writers risked their livelihoods, and they stood out on those picket lines. And now, not only were they successful, did they secure a deal? They secured a pretty historic one, with outlets like Variety calling it far richer and more comprehensive than most industry observers would have predicted last spring. And The Verge even saying it has the power to change how Hollywood works. Now, with that said, there is a lot in this contract, so I'm going to link down to the WGA summary in the description, but we got to talk about some of the major highlights. Regarding wages, most minimum pay rates will increase by 5% this year, 4% next year, and 3.5% in 2025, though some minimums have a smaller increase, mostly by 3% each year. There's also weekly pay increases for staff writers and writer-producers. Then, regarding AI, one of the most contentious issues on the table, the contract established that, quote, AI can't write or rewrite literary material, and AI-generated material will not be considered source material under the MDA, meaning that AI-generated material can't be used to undermine a writer's credit or to separate rights. Also, on top of that, a writer can choose to use AI when writing as long as it's approved by and in line with company policies, but a studio cannot force a writer to use AI. Studios must also disclose if any materials given to a writer have been generated by AI, and the WGA reserves the right to assert that exploitation of writer material train AI is prohibited by the contract. Writers also secured minimum staffing requirements, which were a big part of the fight, with shows having a minimum requirement of writer-producers, and then there's a sliding scale for writers depending on how long the show's season is. Then, regarding residuals, which were another key fight, the contract includes increases in foreign streaming residuals. It also, very key thing, establishes fewer base streaming bonuses, meaning that writers will get extra cash if the made streaming show or movie that they write for meets a certain threshold, which is an absolutely major win. And the WGA also landed data transparency with streaming companies, meaning that studios will actually have to give the guild the total number of hours a title streamed both domestically and internationally. Now, that data will be given confidentially, but reportedly in aggregated form that can trickle down to members. And I really can't understate how big of a deal that is, because those streaming data numbers, no one really fucking knows what they are. I mean, like, the studios know, Netflix knows the real numbers, but you only ever see those numbers when Netflix is like, oh my god, 73 bajillion people watched a show, even though we're only saying that they watched 5 seconds of the show. Right? Most of these companies just share made-up metrics of success. With places like The Verge explaining, the streaming industry has thrived on data opacity, allowing an industry in the business of fiction to twist the story to how it sees fit with carefully crafted data. Now, there will be real, actual hard data available to the WGA membership, and once the genie is out of the bottle, it'll be a whole lot more difficult to smush it back in. So that's why in response to this deal, many people have been celebrating all of the gains that have been made. And sure, Richard, we have some people noting that writers did not get absolutely everything that they asked for. Also, that there were areas where the studios were met in the middle. But one, I mean, that's expected. That's what negotiation is. And two, the writers were also able to secure very meaningful gains on points that were initially non-starters for the studio. So a lot of these are very impressive wins, and you have the likes of Adam Conover, who's also on the negotiating committee, saying these are essential protections that the companies told us to our faces that they would never give us. But because of our solidarity, because they literally cannot make a dollar without us, they bent, then broke, and gave us what we deserve. We didn't win everything, but we tripled what they offered before the strike. And so you take all of that, and that's why writers seem largely thrilled with this deal. And notably, if they're not, members of the guild still have the chance to vote on it. It was officially recommended by the negotiating committee in both branches yesterday, meaning that the ratification vote will go forward in October. But again, like I said, the strike is over, and writers can return to work during this process and still maintain the right to vote either way on the ratification. But all the reports right now say they are largely expected to just give it 2 thumbs up. And so with all that being nearly a wrap on the writer strike, all eyes are on SAG, which will hopefully follow relatively soon, and I will be able to see Beyond the Spider-Verse before I die. Though also, to clarify there, I am just being hyperbolic. There's no reason I should be dead anytime soon. I saw some concerned comments. I am not dropping breadcrumbs. I am just being dramatic, per usual. And then, y'all, welcome. And as far as why, it's because I'm here to remind you that this is your last chance to enter into the sweepstakes to win a brand new upgraded Hennessy Ford Bronco, or if you prefer, $75,000 cash. And all thanks to the fantastic partner and sponsor of the PDS, Ridge. Because Ridge has partnered with Hennessy for their summer sweepstakes, and it ends September 30. You can enter on their site without spending a dime, but there's a bonus multiplier of 2 times entries for every $1 spent on the site for the chance to win. Plus, if you buy the new Hennessy products, you'll get 10x entries. Now, remember, Ridge is the must-have wallet with RFID blocking. It holds up to 12 cards and has room for cash, and comes in over 30 colors and styles to choose from. They don't just promote these sites, they use them, and they also have the option for air tags for those prone to misplace them. Also, the key case is sleek, durable, holds up to 1 to 6 keys, and it takes the jingle out of the keyring experience. So if you've been considering getting a Ridge, now is the best time, because if you use my link, that's ridge.com/DeFranco, you'll get 10 bonus entries and 10% off your purchase. There's just so many ways to get entries to win, people. So go to ridge.com/DeFranco, and the best of luck to you. And then, Yaroslav Hunka is having quite a week. He went from getting a standing ovation in the Canadian Parliament to everyone realizing he was a Nazi, and now, the cherry on top of this whole situation, officials in Poland have now announced, in view of the scandalous events in the Canadian Parliament, which involved honoring, in the presence of President Zelensky, a member of the criminal Nazi SS Galician formation, I have taken steps towards the possible extradition of this man to Poland. And that's because Poland has a well-known policy of getting their hands on Nazis and bringing them to justice. If you ask me, it's pretty fucking dope of them to get their Inglourious Bastards on. But here's the thing, it's unclear if Hunka will actually be extradited. And that's partly because he's nearly 100 years old and will be dead by the time the entire legal process ends. Although notably, that hasn't stopped many places from still doing the proceedings in the hopes that some justice can be served in case they survive long enough. But also, this might not happen because right now it's unclear if Hunka actually did anything to the Polish authorities asking the country's Institute of National Remembrance, which researches crimes against the Polish people, to urgently examine if Hunka did anything to Polish people of Jewish origin, or because they need that in particular to have any grounds to actually ask Canada to extradite him. And as for that, right now, Canada's Attorney General said that no formal request has actually been made yet. And until then, he's refusing to really comment on the matter. And then, Trump committed fraud for years by lying about the value of that same real estate empire that brought him fame and the presidency. That is what a New York judge ruled in a just devastating decision yesterday in the lawsuit brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James against Trump, or with that suit claiming that the former president, along with his adult children and some
but there was no trial, there was no evidence, there was no nothing.
Favorable loans and other financial
this
benefits.
Judge,
New York Supreme Court Justice Arthur Engoron ruled that James had presented him with
this judge literally just banged his gavel and said, okay, dissolve his entire corporation. There was no trial, there was nothing, there was just, I mean, the judge practically did it from his fucking chair at home.
Overvalued their assets from between $812 million and $2.2 billion.
Most, like, one of the most corrupt rulings ever.
And that is absolutely massive because it could have enormous repercussions for the Trump organization. Like, it will make it incredibly difficult, if not impossible, for Trump's businesses to continue operating in the state. Trump could also lose control over his properties in New York, like his flagship commercial property in However, as far as what happens next, this case isn't over yet, right? It still has to go to trial. This decision is still absolutely massive because it establishes that Trump and the others committed fraud. So James won't have to prove that argument any further when the matter goes to trial, which is a huge loss for Trump because his lawyers won't get to argue against that in the trial. Instead, the scope of the trial will be significantly narrowed, with the judge only deciding a handful of remaining claims, and James has asked that Trump be fined $250 million. And as far as the trial, that is set to take place next Monday, but Trump's lawyers have already said that they will appeal the decision, which could cause a delay. Meanwhile, this could also be complicated by a lawsuit Trump filed against Engoron, with that actually expected to be handed down by an appeals court any day now. And then, the other week we talked about ridiculous government spending into programs that we know are a bust. And that makes it all the more infuriating when you take the time to think about how our government treats our veterans, or even the living conditions of many military service members right now. Because actually with that, the Government Accountability Office recently investigated the life of the average veteran service member. With a visiting 10 different military installations across the continental U.S., occupied each branch of the military from California all the way to D.C., toured the bases, interviewed soldiers and officers, and reviewed the Pentagon's records regarding their own facilities. And they found that in several places, soldiers are living in squalor, and that's actually kind of putting it mildly. But the GAO's report on this thing, titled Poor Living Conditions Undermine Quality of Life and Readiness. And it is filled with horrible photos of backed up sewage, mold. I mean, just to kick us off, the report reads that one facility had, quote, a bad odor throughout the barracks, and it's not man smell. Investigators were actually told it was methane gas leaking from plumbing that was so old that pipes frequently cracked. And it's not like the officials at this facility didn't know this was an issue. They even acknowledged to the investigators that the exposure to methane gas is a health risk. One installation had completely close its barracks because of an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease, a type of pneumonia. With a report reading, officials told us that only barracks housing healthcare patients and thus subject to Joint Commission health standards undergo water testing. So with that saying, they don't test other barracks to ensure similar levels of water quality and safety because they're not required to do so. Which, speaking of sickness, in 5 of those barracks, mold was a widespread problem. And we're not talking like a little mold. It was so bad that one service member had to go to the ER 3 separate times for respiratory issues and eventually moved to a different, cleaner barrack, with their problem then immediately clearing up. And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Some barracks even saw sewage backup in the bathrooms and overflow. The soldiers expected to battle this constant stream of literal shit with a report reading. They've had to organize working days for service members to repaint external and internal walls, replace ceiling tiles, and clean up significant sewage overflow. There's also more than just health concerns here. There are several barracks investigated by the GOA that had serious safety issues as well. Key systems like fire suppression or even just basic security like window and door locks were found broken and never replaced. At one location, an ex of one of the service members actually broke into the barracks and assaulted someone. And many officers are actually chasing out squatters. In fact, during the tour of one of the facilities, GOA investigators actually found a squatter in one of the rooms they were visiting. And understandably, living in these kinds of conditions can take a serious toll on someone. In fact, in each discussion led by investigators, the consensus was found that conditions of the barracks have a direct impact on the mental health of its occupants. In the report reading, for example, in one group, a service member told us about increased anxiety and panic attacks about living in the barracks. In another, a service member said it was depressing to come home to a dark box after work. And several service members said in interviews that the state of the barrack contributed to substance abuse and even increased suicide rates for residents. And at one installation, according to the report, service members are responsible for cleaning up after suicide. And so with this, one of the questions is, well, how did it get to this point? How are the top brass not aware that many of their soldiers are living in squalor? And according to the GAO, the military simply doesn't have reliable information about many of the barracks, and that in part due to their seemingly arbitrary grading system. So the military gives a condition score ranging from 1 to 100 for each barracks facility. And according to officials, facilities with lower scores are more likely to receive funding for maintenance and improvement because a lower score typically indicates the building is deteriorating. However, 7 of the 10 military installations visited in this investigation had significant problems, and each one of them had condition scores over 80, meaning they were supposedly in good condition. In fact, investigators toured one facility closed for remodeling due to long-standing issues with plumbing and electrical systems. And officials actually deemed the building uninhabitable, but somehow, at the time of its closure, the barracks facility's condition score was above 90. This report also said something about no reliable way of knowing what's actually going on at the barracks, saying DoD does not track information on the condition of barracks or facilitate collaboration on initiatives to improve barracks. And of course, it certainly doesn't help that the Department of Defense is a black hole that sucks in billions of dollars that don't seem to go anywhere. With a report reading, DoD requested about $15 billion for overall facility sustainment for fiscal year 2024, but could not identify how much of this total would be spent toward barracks. So with this whole shit show, the GAO offered 31 recommendations for addressing these problems, including providing guidance on barracks condition assessments, obtaining funding information, and increasing oversight of barracks programs. And actually, according to the GAO, the DoD has agreed with 23 of their recommendations and partially agreed with the other 8. So for now, we're gonna have to wait to see if that's just lip service, if things are shitty, it just gets swept back into the black hole that is the Department of Defense, or they actually do something to make the lives of our service members a little bit better, maybe even borderline decent. But in the meantime, of course, I'd love to know everyone's thoughts, but especially if
I don't know, I thought my...
know someone who is, whatever. Know a lot of different people that are connected in a lot of different ways. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. And then
living situation in the military was okay.
Some of us, not so much. I would put myself in that camp. But one thing everyone has in common, we all share the same basic foundational needs like nutrient replenishment, gut optimization, stress, your first purchase of AG1. And then, so there's something that I need to just kind of communicate to you guys. I'm in this place where our needs no longer align, and our relationship is becoming toxic. And so for my own self-care, I'm setting down a boundary and taking some time to process my trauma because I don't have the emotional space to give you what you're asking for right now. And if all of that sounds like complete and utter gibberish to you, you're not alone. With things like this new Insider article documenting the rise of so-called therapy speak text bombs and why everyone hates them. Everything seems fine, and then all of a sudden you check your phone and there's this giant 10-page essay detailing every grievance, every broken boundary, every toxic behavior. But what makes today's text bombing even worse than before is that it's delivered in that detached, almost playful voice known as therapy speak. Phrase vocabulary that throws around terms like toxic, gaslighting, trauma, triggers, emotional labor, attachment styles, coping mechanisms, with friends and romantic partners casually diagnosing themselves and others with things like OCD, ADHD, or a host of personality disorders. While things like this get attention every now and then because of high-profile cases, very notably, there has been a growing conversation about whether these can help them. With, for example, one psychologist in San Francisco arguing that far from helping us actually reflect and examine our feelings, therapy speak often detaches us from ourselves and others, and saying, by virtue of being human beings, we're masters at distancing ourselves from life. And adding one way we distance ourselves is through words. words. What we've got now is this kind of pop psychology language of cliches, abstract concepts, and turn of phrase that are so different from speaking from the heart. Instead of having to actually describe our inner experience or figure out the nuances of a relationship, we can hide behind these terms that serve as both sword and shield. And so you see these terms get abused. So if someone disagrees with someone, they're instantly gaslighted. If you have a conflict with someone, that's emotional abuse. Everything's pathologized. Everything's clinical. Now, that said, I don't want to paint everything with a broad brush. Like most everything that ends up getting overused or abused by some, those fucked up situations usually exist at the same time where people are actually benefiting from it. And I think that's reflected especially with a lot of young people that appear to have greater awareness of mental health and relationship dynamics, and so-called therapy speak just kind of reflects that. Or because 100% confirmed, popular terms like triggered and narcissist do describe real phenomena, and they can help provide excellent clarity to people's experiences. With one author, for example, writing in The Guardian, if someone says they were traumatized by the pandemic, by isolation, caring for dying people, loss of loved ones, financial ruin, long COVID, is that not valid? If a young person is struggling because their parents can barely afford to feed them, or with their identity in a world that doesn't seem hospitable to who they might want to be, might approaching therapy speak help them feel like they have more agency? Then also to that, you have critics saying one of the problems with so-called therapy speak are terms that kind of get watered down. They can become meaningless psychobabble. So whereas like a trigger was a concept originally invented for the treatment of PTSD, now it's often used to explain whenever someone doesn't like something and reacts negatively to it. Whereas treatment for actual trauma entails slowly and carefully helping someone tolerate their discomfort by exposing them to it in a controlled environment, today's popular culture often assumes that triggers are something to be avoided at all costs. And one of the biggest key things here is that actual psychotherapists tend to not use that kind of language during sessions with their clients, instead speaking with them more plainly. But a lot of therapy speak doesn't even come from therapy. For example, gaslighting, it doesn't even come from psychology literature. It comes from a film in the 1940s. And while there are different and conflicting arguments as to the rise of therapy speak, whatever the cause may be, many therapists themselves are offering more productive ways to talk to people. One psychologist says, quote, if you want a relationship with someone, it's a constant push and pull and conversation and nuanced understanding of people's behaviors and forgiveness. Sending a huge text outlining someone's flaws doesn't leave room for that. So instead, suggesting using I statements and focusing on how specific actions made you feel rather than the person's character as a whole, that it works much better. Also saying to say it in person, or at least over the phone, not a huge text or a string of texts. You also had another psychologist saying that sometimes you should adjust your expectations about the relationship, and explaining, I think you need to evaluate whether or not you're trying to fit a friend that is a square peg into a round hole. There are different roles for different people in our lives. And so my hope in covering this story is that, hopefully it's useful to at least some of you. Hopefully it feels like I'm trying to have a conversation about this topic rather than just trying to invalidate someone's lived experiences. But at the end of the day, I never really know how the words coming out of my mouth are going to hit those ears of yours. So in those comments down below, I'd love to hear your thoughts, your feelings on this topic and news. And like with all the comments on the show now, some of those might end up in the Yesterday Today segment tomorrow. And then let's talk about Yesterday Today, the part of the show where you look back to yesterday's show where we covered a lot of news stories. We dive into those comments and see which stories stood out to you. What are your opinions, your feelings, your reactions, maybe even your experiences? Yesterday, there were a few stories that took over the conversation regarding the child labor scandal. A lot of y'all were just exhausted saying things like, at this point, it's harder to list big companies and corporations that don't use child labor. People also saying, I have a hard time believing that there aren't cameras everywhere in the factories that those children were working at, right, for management to micromanage, and therefore have a really hard time believing that they weren't aware of the child labor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, I'm deeply concerned that the FBI and the Department of Justice are thoroughly politicized. I think this is a problem that began during the Obama administration. I think it metastasized with career officials during the Trump administration, and I think it continues and is even worse today under the Biden administration. I don't believe you personally reflect that politicization, but I think you've been unwilling to root it out and unwilling to hold people accountable for the politicization. I hear regularly from FBI agents and from professionals at the Department of Justice who are dismayed that our law enforcement has been weaponized and politicized rather than remaining apolitical as it has been for the history of our country. Yesterday, it was reported that Project Veritas had obtained a copy of an FBI training material, which listed various symbols and themes which, in the FBI's estimation, were indicative of, quote, militia violent extremism. Now, these symbols weren't things like the Ku Klux Klan or the Nazi Party, which naturally would be symbols of that, but instead they included, rather astonishingly, patriotic symbols of our nation and our history, Included on this list is the Betsy Ross flag. Now, that's fairly remarkable that the Betsy Ross flag in the FBI's indication is indicative of militia violent extremism, because among other people who have been publicly alongside the Betsy Ross flag, we have President Barack Obama, who was sworn in directly underneath two Betsy Ross flags. But it's not just President Obama. We also have President Biden, who was sworn in under Betsy Ross flags. It's not just the Betsy Ross flag. Also on this list is the Gadsden flag as a symbol of violent extremism. Now, the state of Virginia has a license plate for the Gadsden flag, as do many other states. I think people would be astonished to find that having that license plate, the FBI indicates that you're a violent extremist. Also included on this is a text that I was particularly struck, is the Gonzales battle flag. Come and take it. As indicative of being a violent extremist militia. Well, I will self-report right now that every day in the Senate I wear my boots that have the Gonzales battle flag on the back of them. Director Wray, what are y'all doing? This makes no sense. Do you agree with this FBI guidance that the Betsy Ross flag and the Gadsden flag and the Gonzales battle flag are signs of militia violent extremism?
Well, Senator, I'm not familiar with the particular document you have behind you, and I'm not in the practice of trying to comment on documents that I haven't recognized, but I will tell you that when we put out intelligence products, including ones that reference symbols, which we do across a wide variety of contexts, we usually take great pains to put caveats and warnings in the document that make clear that a symbol alone is not considered evidence of violent extremism, and it's...
Well, but Director Wray, you don't include things like Antifa, you don't include things like Black Lives Matter. Instead, you identify patriotic Americans as suspect, and I would note there's a pattern of this. As you're aware, the National Association of School Boards asked the Attorney General to investigate parents as domestic terrorists under the Patriot Act. Now, it did so because it was upset about moms and dads coming to school boards and disagreeing with the policies of those schools. 5 days after that letter, the Attorney General sent a memo to you directing the FBI to target parents for investigation. Since that time, the National Association of School Boards has apologized for the letter because it was so indefensible, but that hasn't stopped the FBI. In fact, you've created a specific threat tag directed at parents. So let me ask you, how many moms and dads who have spoken up at school boards has the FBI interviewed or investigated since the memo from the Attorney General?
Well, first off, I'll say I'm not aware of any. But second, let me address the issue.
You're not aware of any? Like,
Just
the House of
if you'd let me-
Representatives has
if you-
written you and asked
you
you
would
about
let
it.
me, If you would let me.
So please
finish,
answer.
Let me say to you and to this committee the same thing I said to every FBI field office after I read the memo, which was that the FBI is not going to be in the business of investigating speech or policing speech at school board meetings or anywhere else, and that we're not about to start now, that threats of violence, that's a different matter altogether, and there we will work with our state and local partners as we always have.
So,
Now,
Director
you asked
Ray,
about- you asked about-
Director Ray, our time is, do you know how many parents you have interviewed or investigated since that memo?
I am aware that we have had a small number of assessments.
Welcome back to the comments section. I'm Brett Cooper. So recently, I've been trying to defend Gen Z. I think you guys know I've made quite a few videos showing some more positive sides of my generation, things that we do that I find very positive and hopeful. But today is not one of those days. because my generation has decided to make cigarettes trendy. Now, it seems like my entire generation should know how bad they are for you. Like, we all grew up learning about how terrible they are for our bodies, and one would think that how we were raised would stick. But if there is anything that I've learned from social media, it's that nothing is original. Every trend is pulled from the past. I mean, just look at fashion these days, and it seems like cigarettes are now coming back into style, which I'm sorry, I personally hate it. Before we get into it, though, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to this channel if you have not already, and ring that notification bell so that you never miss a comment section or a vlog episode. For as long as I've been alive, the propaganda surrounding smoking and cigarettes had been long exposed. Like, we know about those old ads saying, like, doctors recommend this brand, and, you know, this brand's great for women's health. Like, we know that all of those ads were bought and paid for by the tobacco industry. Very similar to what we now know about alcohol and about how those studies that said, oh, you know, just a glass of wine is really good for your brain. That was bogus. That was paid for by the alcohol industry. Now, my generation has grown up knowing about these harmful consequences of smoking, and research would reflect that cigarette sales have gone down tremendously over the past few decades. And here's a graph for us visual folks. You can see straight on down. And this is obviously a great healthy trend to see. And with all the resources and stories that we have now, I am sure that everybody has either learned why they're terrible in school or from doctors or just from, you know, existing in 2023, or has experienced it firsthand with somebody that they know dealing with, you know, addiction, throat cancer, lung cancer, you name it. But in 2020, this trend of decreasing sales finally broke.
Somehow smoking returns.
Cigarettes are having a renaissance, and Gen Z is driving it. And I blame celebrities, because there are so many younger celebrities, younger influencers that are out in public smoking cigarettes in front of paparazzi, posting them on their Instagram story, kind of like a cool aesthetic thing, which has just got to be an awful influence on all the younger people looking up to them, because obviously these celebrities are idolized. For example, here's a picture of Dua Lipa back in June. She posted this on her Instagram. Like, there's a comment on there, and it's like, all the anti-smoke comments, you're so sexy when you smoke. Obviously, people are hyping her up, showing that it is, you know, I guess, cool. And then Jenna Ortega, the young actress who is the title role in the Netflix show Wednesday, she caused a whole stir online that was also in June of this year when these paparazzi photos went viral. This is her having coffee with a friend of hers, smoking, lighting up her cigarette, all of that. Her mother, who is on Instagram very publicly. A lot of people follow her. She's not some influencer, but people found her account because of being associated with Jenna. She is a nurse. She even took to Instagram the next day to make some not so subtle comments about her daughter's new very public habit, like posting this meme saying, "Don't believe those lies about cigarettes being bad for you. I've been smoking them for most of my 21 years and I feel great." Then right after, she posted a story about lung cancer and a few other ones. Obviously, she is a nurse. She has a right to talk about that. I also feel like she and my mother would better get along, although my mother would not post it on social media. She would just find some way to haul my 21-year-old adult butt back to Idaho and ground it. Jenna Ortega and Dua Lipa are not the only ones smoking, far from it, and news outlets are catching on to this trend. I mean, here's an article from just last week. Young celebrities like Timothée Chalamet are smoking cigarettes. It matters, say public health experts. I also feel like it's just a very European thing. Timothée Chalamet, I think he's half French. Lily Rose Depp is also smoking a lot. She's, I think, her mom is French, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, the article says, in fact, Florence Pugh and Anya Joy, both 27, and Jenna Ortega and Lily Rose Depp, both 20, have all been photographed with smoking cigarettes this year. Chalamet's rumored girlfriend, Jenner, was also caught holding what looked like a pack of cigarettes, and Dua Lipa, 28, has posted Instagram photos herself featuring cigarettes. One which garnered a comment, "The fact that you smoke occasionally is super sexy." And listen, I don't really like or trust most public health experts, especially after what we went through in 2020, but I agree with them on this one. And that last comment is super important because all of this is for the aesthetic, and I think that is my biggest problem here. I get it, because we all love the photos of old Hollywood stars like Marilyn Monroe smoking her long, skinny cigarettes, and like the Cary Grants of the world with his like beautiful suits and his slick back hair, and he's smoking it. It's like, oh, it's like hot. If you love old Hollywood, I know you get it. Men in highways to not Harry Styles, but Carrie. Just saying. Like, I'm sure we all have photos of our grandfathers back when they were like 22 years old, smoking a cigarette, looking, you know, fly as hell. If you haven't seen those photos, you can get them digitized with Legacy Box. I mean, think of all the time and money your family invested to capture family vacations and special events like birthdays and your wedding. I mean, recording a lifetime of memories was a commitment. Camcorders would cost thousands of dollars. Tapes were expensive, and cameras required film and development. Legacy Box exists to preserve your family's recorded memories digitally, ensuring that they are safe. Legacy Box is a simple and safe solution for digitizing your life. And by By going to legacybox.com/Cooper, you can enjoy 40% off when you get started today. The process is easy. Just send in your legacy box filled with old VHS tapes, camcorder tapes, and pictures, and their team will professionally digitize everything by hand in the USA, and you'll get it back on the cloud or a thumb drive along with your originals. Legacy Box digitizes over 15 different types of analog media, so whether it is VHS tapes, Super 8mm film reels, or photonegative, they have you covered. After 10 years in business, Legacy Box is the world's largest digitizer. They have helped over 1 million families, including many people on my team, remember precious childhood memories and preserve them for the future. If you want to get started, go to legacybox.com/Cooper to get an incredible 40% off. You can purchase today, they'll send you the box, and you can send it in whenever you're ready. That's legacybox.com/Cooper today. And hopefully, you've got some very cool photos of your grandfather smoking a cigarette, because you should not be doing that. And there's something very nostalgic about it, but that doesn't make it a good or healthy habit. And a lot of celebrities like this and influencers on TikTok and Instagram are trying to make this fashionable and a cute social thing that they do to meet people, or they only do when they're drinking, which is literally just them trying to convince themselves that it's not bad and they're not addicted and it's not a bad habit. Let's check out the video.
I am not condoning smoking cigarettes. Don't do it. But I do think it's okay for me to sometimes smoke a ciggy, because if I go outside, I can always become friends with people on my block. And I'm not doing that. How else am I supposed to just look at people and do this? You know the universal head nod? I think I'm like best friends with the creature in my block group.
Listen, if you want to do a universal head nod, get a Jeep. That's all they do all day long. They raise the finger, they nod. If you want that so badly, there are other options, I'm telling you. Here's another one. Like, this guy doesn't even smoke. He wrote, I don't even smoke, but I was thinking about how smoking is such a cute activity. Like, apart from the lung cancer, money spent, nicotine addiction, and all of that, the smoker community is so cute with their lighter sharing, cutting together, socializing through smoking. Nobody ever talks about that. Well, they're talking about it now because it's a trend on TikTok, damn it. And no, it's not a cute or a fun way to get to know your neighbor. Like, there are other ways to be social and make friends. Just like I said with drinking, you do not need to rely on an objectively unhealthy substance as a crutch. You will be better off without them, I guarantee it. You do not need to just go outside to smoke a cigarette in order to make a friend. If you are struggling socially, I promise there are other ways to get over that. The worst part of this was not just the videos of people like deciding that this was cute or a trend. It was the comments hyping them up and agreeing. Like, this person said, I love this, it's so cute and social. Somebody else said, the lighter sharing is too cute. Another person said, honestly, 50% of why people keep smoking is because of that community feeling. Also, it is always a great excuse to go outside for some fresh air. I would not consider secondhand smoke fresh air. I understand the nostalgic aspect of it. I understand the aesthetic, and I do understand that people are desperate for a community. Like, there's this whole topic of conversation about third places, and I want to do a full episode about this, but psychologists have said that we are severely lacking third places. And, you know, your first place is your home, your second place is either school or work, and we used to have third places where people would go to just drink coffee together, read a book, be part of their community, be involved when they're not working. It's not going to a coffee shop and working remotely, it's going to a coffee shop to like sit and talk to people. We are severely lacking those third places as a society. So obviously people are finding that through other means, whether that's getting outside and smoking or just spending time online, because for a lot of people, for a lot of my generation, the third place is social media. It is TikTok. It is watching these YouTube videos. So obviously I understand that socially people are struggling, but again, you don't have to rely on an objectively bad, unhealthy habit. Somebody else said also at work, you get a better bond with others that smoke and freeze outside. Another person said, do you have a lighter? Instant friendship begins. Somebody else said, that's so many mates at uni for smoking. It's like an adult friendship. Stop. It's unreal. I'm sorry, but I hate it. It isn't social. There are other ways to make yourself feel cool or confident without harming yourself and the people around you.
Hey kid, you look good with that cigarette. Kinda sophisticated.
You guys know I love my dogs. There's very...
Starts. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Speed bats.
So hot. My God.
Gain the lead.
Ah. My turn was not exactly
Lost the lead.
efficient. No!
Tied the leader. Lost the lead. Tied the leader. Gained the lead.
I'm not the only one that died by bridge.
Lost the lead. Tied the leader. Double kill. Lost the lead. Killing spree. Tied the leader. Gained the lead. Lost the lead.
Ah, you gotta be kidding me.
Game over.
Hey, Whitney, how's it going? Hi, Mallory. Hey. Oh, thanks so much for picking me up from the airport.
Oh, you're welcome anytime. Oh, also, I brought your phone.
Oh, thank you. You know, I'm leaving this
Oof,
home was the
da.
best mistake I ever made.
Yeah.
Anyway, is it okay if I take some messages right now?
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm just gonna pull the car over.
Okay, thanks.
You have 95 messages.
Oh.
First message.
Hey, Whitney, it's Matt. I hope you're having fun. Listen, I was just calling about your dog. I know you gave me very specific instructions on what to feed him, but I have a hypothetical question for you. What if he got confused and ate all of your laundry detergent and then vomited all over your bed? Hypothetically. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Next message. Carlos, I love you, Veronica. Let's run away together, mi amor. You are beautiful, beautiful. Little woman man, and I love you. Next message.
Whitney, this is your grandmother. I haven't seen you in a while.
Message deleted. Next message. Carlos, I do not understand why you call me back. I put a woman on your answering machine. Call me back, you filthy traitor. Next message.
Oh, right in disguise.
Message hit. Carlos, I am so sad with this sadness for you. Message hit.
Hi, Whitney. This is Dr. Al.
Killing
We
spree.
just got the results of your
Double
biopsy
kill.
back, and, well, I don't want to be a negative Nancy.
Message deleted.
Hey, Whitney, it's Matt again. Remember how I left you a message yesterday?
Double kill. Triple kill. Kill right scope.
Who the heck is Carlos?
I wanted you to know that we have reached phase 3. I repeat, we have reached phase 3. And by that I mean
Well, hello, beautiful. You must be Carlos. Little squeeze. You look nervous. You want to know how I got this number?
Next message.
The game is up, Carlos. I finally found you. I tracked this numero down, and to repay you for what you did to me and my familia, I burned your house to the ground. Now your home and your weirdly feminine throw pillows and your Justin Bieber posters are nothing but the ashes.
Next message.
He ate my hand! Your rabid beast of a dog ate my hand! Also, your house is on fire. What's up with that?
Ready to go? I'm so excited to introduce you to my new boyfriend. His name's Carlos. I don't know what he does, but he makes a lot of money.
Hey guys, Will here. No, you're not dreaming. What we have in front of us, believe it or not, is the new Fnatic QR2 quick release system after what's almost 3 years of waiting now. So there's no other way around this. This is probably the most critical product for Fnatic that they've ever released. The entire ecosystem, the future of their ecosystem is going to hinge around what this quick release system is like. There's a lot of other products that have come out on the market since their original QR1 was designed that, as you guys have seen in other review videos, are objectively a lot stronger and a lot more rigid than what the QR1 system is. So if this isn't good, then it is really, really, really going to hurt the Fnatic ecosystem overall. So what we're going to be doing in today's video is going over this in as much detail as we can. Whether or not you're looking into buying into the Fnatic ecosystem for the first time, we're waiting to see what this is like, whether it's worth upgrading to the QR2 system over the QR1 system, what that upgrade path might look like as well, and basically just going through all the details of everything we think you need to know about the QR2 and what it's like to drive with. So let's dive in. Okay guys, so firstly, a big thank you to Fnatic for sending across this gear for us to check out today. Now, as you guys that watch the channel regularly will know, we also like to test and compare against a bunch of other gear from other manufacturers in our videos to give you the best overall picture possible of what might suit your needs and budgets most appropriately. So important that you guys know that all the other gear that we're going to be comparing to in today's video was also sent to us under exactly the same conditions. Now, if you do decide you want to pick up any of the gear that we talk about in today's video, whether it's Fnatic or any other brand, we do have some affiliate links available down in the description below. Those are an awesome way of helping support our work here at Digital Media at no additional cost to you. And that's just something that's available for you guys that want to help support our work and find what we do here of benefit to you. So we really do appreciate the support there. It's of course completely up to you guys whether or not you want to use those links. Now, it's also important that you know that no third party of any type, whether it's Fnatic or any other brand, has any kind of input whatsoever into what we're going to be sharing in today's video. It's purely just my own observations and my own opinions. Nothing more, nothing less.
You little
nobody gets to see
snot.
what you guys do as well. So we're going to start today's video off a little bit differently. Normally I would go straight into pricing, but I want to kind of set the stage here a little bit for you guys today by talking about some of the issues that I personally have experienced with the QR1 system and some of the things that we see talked about quite regularly in forums. Some of the reasons why, quite frankly, quite a few people have moved away from the Fnatic ecosystem and looked at other options while we've been waiting for this product to release, or maybe have invested in other ecosystems to begin with. So look, and I'm gonna keep this to just my own observations and things that I've experienced myself. I would always recommend you guys jump into forums and you know, have a look around online to find, you know, as much information as you can on these things. So I've got a couple of bits and pieces here that I'm going to use to demonstrate this before we look at the QR2 in more detail. So what we have here is a motor shaft from a CSLD GT DD Pro, and also a motor shaft from a DD1 or a DD2. Now, the basic interface where the wheel physically connects to the hub has been pretty much the same design since Fnatic first introduced interchangeable wheels into their ecosystem, except for just a few minor differences in the pin assembly between some of the various different bases. Now, we did see one issue in particular with the Club Sport wheelbase 2.5, where that seemed to be a little bit more prone to breaking pins on the steering wheels. We saw more, and this is just my own observation, but we definitely saw more people complaining about broken pins using a Club Sport wheelbase 2.5 than we ever see on the CSL DD or DD1 and DD2. And I actually did experience some broken pins on steering wheels using a Club Sport wheelbase 2.5
got in my way
many
of
years ago. There's a
retreat.
video buried deep on the channel if you want to go back and troll through to find it. But look, basically, the way this interface works is you've got your wheel side part of the quick release that has a keyway on it. I don't need to go into a lot of detail on this because you guys are familiar with it already for the most part, but it slides in like that. You pull on the tab, it slides into position and locks into place. Now it looks all well and good. To release it again, you just pull on the tab and it comes out. But there is some manufacturing tolerance on both the motor side of the stem here and the wheel side with the sleeve. So what that means is when you put the two together, if there's any discrepancy at all there, what happens is that shaft, and you can see on this one as an example when it's not clicked into place, does have a little bit of play there. You can see it's just moving around and wobbling a little bit. Now there are some ball bearings internally there as well, which lock into the divots on the ring, but the amount of spring force that's there isn't enough to, make you not able to physically move the wheel from side to side. So the impact of that is that you do feel a little bit of sensation, and it varies depending on, your batch of quick releases and your batch of stems. So some people will say that they don't experience any movement at all. Other people will say that there's a ton of movement. It's just basically luck of the draw down to those manufacturing tolerances. And we've had, probably 30 different Fnatic wheels come through here, probably 10 or so different bases, and every single combination is always a little bit different, but there's always some level of play there, at least in my experience. And what that play does is it introduces a couple of issues. So as I said before, you feel that little bit of wobble in the steering wheel. It can also create a horrible clunking noise as well. So it kind of sounds like that. And a lot of people often wonder what that sound is. It's actually, again, in my observation, just the quick release rotating a little bit on the shaft, and under sharp changes of direction, you can actually get a little bit of a clunking sound. And as I described earlier, what that also introduces is a little bit of movement, which can over time fatigue the pins in the back of the steering wheel. So if we look at the back of this steering wheel here, you can see that is Fnatic's standard pin assembly, which is the same on the QR2, but I'll explain how that is integrated into the design of that a little bit later on. But you can imagine if that wheel is wobbling back and forth and it's going, and those pins are going into a assembly like this, if there isn't any play in the receptacle side, then over time those pins are going to fatigue and break off. And that was the issue, again, in my observation with the design of the Club Sport wheelbase 2.5. It had a different pin assembly which didn't allow the pins to actually wiggle around in the receptacle side, and what that meant is that they would fatigue a lot more quickly. I haven't actually seen anybody complain about broken pins myself on a CSL DD or a DD1 and DD2 because of that difference in the design there that does allow a little tiny bit of play there. So that is that's basically how it worked on the QR1 for the CSL DD and the older wheelbases. Now there is also a little threaded hole on the bottom of the quick release as well as on the wheel side, which did actually act as basically a retainer. So what you would do is you would put the two together, like so, put them together, and then there was a screw that they included with all of their wheels, which you could put through, and that would kind of lock the two into position. But because it's only pivoting on a single axis there, in my experience at least, there was always still that little bit of movement from side to side. You could still wiggle the wheel and feel that metal-to-metal contact in the case of the Club Sport quick release. And then they also later released, as we just saw, their simplified quick release, which uses a similar mechanism internally, but uses little plastic fingers. And we've got a full review of this, which you can check out for more detail. But basically what happens is rather than having a spring-loaded ball bearing mechanism to lock the wheel into position on the hub, what this one would do is slide in like so. And then what you would do is you would actually rotate the ring to squeeze those fingers in, and that would create the connection. Now that didn't have that kind of slop or play in the mechanism, but because it is a glass-infused plastic design as opposed to metal, it has more flex inherent in the design in general. And you guys can see in the footage on your screen now how much movement there was in that. So whether or not you notice that movement when driving is, of course, a very subjective thing. I tend to notice it because I'm very attuned to those kinds of things. We'll pop that out again. But, some people say that it's never really been a problem for them either. So that's basically the rundown on the limitations, I guess you can say, of the QR1 system as it pertains to the CSL DD, GT DD Pro, and some of their older wheelbases like the CSL Elite Club Sport wheelbase 2.5 and so forth. Then there is the stem that you get on the DD1 and DD2. And you can see this is essentially the same design for all intents and purposes, except what they did here was they integrated a little rubber ring, which you could actually squish up by tightening this collar around the outside. And the idea of that was that it would reduce the amount of play from side to side because this rubber ring would compress and squish up inside the quick release. So you can imagine you pop this guy on, and then as you tighten this end up, that squishes up and that removes that play from side to side. In practice, I never found that it made a significant difference, really. It did kind of remove that metal-to-metal contact, but it didn't reduce, in my opinion, the overall sensation of flex in the wheel. So it was a bit of a, I don't want to sound too harsh, but in my opinion, it was a bit of a band-aid solution to a problem that was basically just inherent in the design of the quick release. And of course, it's not an easy problem to solve because they need to be able to maintain that backward compatibility with all of their older wheels. Remembering again that that quick release system was designed in a time where wheelbases weren't anywhere near as strong as they are today. So it didn't need to be as sturdy as it is now. So broken pins on some of their earlier wheelbases was an issue. It doesn't seem to be quite such an issue now, but the main issue that people have is just that flex and that movement in the wheel. Now, of course, any movement in the wheel will have an objective impact if you were to measure it on the quality of the force feedback because it is introducing some damping. But subjectively, again, as I said, whether or not you actually feel that sensation when you're driving is a very debatable thing. Some people say that it's absolutely horrendous. Some people say they don't notice it at all, but you know, where you fall in that. Let us know in the comments down below if you've got experience with the QR1, what your experience has been like, whether it's something that bothers you or not. So that kind of sets the stage for the QR2 system now. So let's dive in now. Let's talk about pricing of these guys. Then we'll get into how it works, how it's installed, and of course, how it improves those issues that we've just talked about. So pricing. Now this is going to get a little bit complicated depending on your particular scenario, whether you're looking to buy into the ecosystem or upgrade existing gear. They have told us that there will be some upgrade kits at discounted prices available. They haven't shared any detail on that at the time that we're recording this, but by the time you guys are seeing this video, hopefully, fingers crossed, if everything goes well, and it really does with product launches for Fnatic, the website always seems to crash and have a few issues. But provided that everything works as it's meant to, everything should be live on the website by the time you guys are seeing this video, so you'll be able to go and take a look for yourselves. So let's start off talking about the wheelbase side of things, because of course you will need to upgrade those two different stems that we talked about for your CSL DD or GT DD Pro or your DD1, DD2. Unfortunately, there isn't an upgrade path available for the older Club Sport wheelbase 2.5 or anything earlier than that, or the CSL Elite wheelbases. So you will need a GT DD Pro or CSL DD or a DD1 DD2 to take advantage of this new ecosystem. And of course, their new products that will release in the future will automatically come with the new stem. But my understanding is that at least for a period of time, we believe 1 to 2 years, if you do buy any future bases that come out and you want to integrate it with your older QR1 system, say you don't want to upgrade every single wheel that you have, for example, there will be some sort of a downgrade path available too. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like, but I'm sure they'll share the details and we'll be able to share more on that into the future. So if you already own a DD1 or a DD2 or a CSL DD or GT DD Pro, you are going to need to purchase a upgraded shaft to bring you into the QR2 ecosystem. We unfortunately, at the time of recording this, only have European or US pricing, although, as I said before, by the time you're watching this, hopefully all the products will be live on their website and you can see for yourself the pricing anyway if you're in one of those other regions. But if you're looking at upgrading your DD1 or DD2 wheelbase, you're going to be looking at the Type M adapter, which comes in at €149.95 or US dollars. If you're looking at upgrading your CSL DD or your GT DD Pro, you're going to be looking at the Type C adapter, and that comes in at €69.95 or US dollars. Now, flipping over to the wheel side, there's actually going to be 3 different quick releases available depending on how much you want to spend and what type of wheel you're going to be mounting it on. Now, for the most part, they are cross-compatible or interchangeable, just with the exception of the light version. That will have the exception of not unlocking the high torque modes on the DD1 and DD2. So if you're running on a DD1 and DD2, you will want to stick with the either standard QR2 or the Pro QR2. So what are the differences? The QR2 Pro, that comes in at €199.95 or US dollars. And that is actually a FIA certified quick release. So it's the same one that you're going to be getting if you've already purchased their M4 GT3 wheel, for example. So in the case of the QR2 Pro, it's actually CNC machined from a block of aircraft grade aluminium. So they machine that down, and that of course gives them extremely tight tolerances. And it's also PTFE coated to make it glide on to the motor stem a little bit more elegantly, I guess you could say, than the standard version. The standard version is actually a cast aluminium, but they also CNC machine the casting afterwards. So that maintains the same level of precision in the manufacturing and the same tolerances when mounting it, but it does make the manufacturing process a little bit cheaper. And this one isn't, of course, FIA certified, if that's important to you, but I think there's probably only going to be about 3 or 4 people in the entire world that actually matters to. This one doesn't have the PTFE coating. Look, honestly, I don't feel a massive difference between the two, mating them up against the quick release anyway, so I don't think it's really a big deal. I think if you want to be absolutely baller, then by all means go for the more expensive one. As I said before, the M4 GT3 wheel will be coming with this one moving forward, and those who have already purchased that wheel will be receiving the Pro version in the mail. But the standard QR2, that guy comes in at €99.95 or $99.95 US, so half the price pretty much of the Pro version. So pretty significant saving there for, you know, no real difference in the overall driving experience other than just the aesthetics and that slight difference in how it feels sliding on and off. So then we have the QR2 Lite adapter. Now this guy comes in quite a bit cheaper than the standard. This comes in at €59.95 or US, and this is going to be compatible with all of the interchangeable quick release models within the CSL Elite range or CSL range, as well as the Club Sports F1 Esports V2 wheel, which also has that interchangeable quick release. So if you're wanting to purchase the cheaper one for the other Club Sport Series wheels, like the V2.5 Formula wheels, for example, and of course the Podium Series 2, you will have problems because of this little plastic tab here, which is designed to enable or disable the high torque mode on the DD1 and DD2. So yeah, quite a bit cheaper there, but you are getting a much lower quality overall in terms of presentation, at least, piece of equipment here. Now we'll get into the rigidity of this a little bit later on, so stay tuned for that for sure. But you can see what they've done here is they've used a carbon fiber reinforced plastic material. I'm not sure whether it's exactly the same material that they used on the simplified quick release. I believe that was a glass infused plastic, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on this, but anyway, either way, it's a recycled carbon fiber infused plastic material, or what they call it here in their notes is a carbon fiber reinforced polyamide. I think I'm saying that right, I'm not a chemist, but a carbon fiber reinforced polyamide construction using recycled carbon fiber. So yeah, you can see that they've put a lot of work into this, and they actually tell me that it was this version of the quick release which held up everything basically, because they were coming back and forth and you know, really trying to make this as rigid as it could possibly be. And you can see they've got all these plastic ridges throughout the entire thing here to try and give it as much reinforcement as it possibly can have. It's got the same mechanism in here as well, as you can see. It does definitely sound a little bit more plasticky and toy-like compared to these guys. And this one, I mean, obviously you're going to expect that for a, you know, a plastic construction, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this guy stacks up in terms of actual usage compared to the other two over here. Just looking at it at face value, I do have concerns that maybe we might see a little bit of flex just around where it mounts to the wheel, because it's just, you know, I mean, you can see how much reinforcement they've added there, but, you know, that is going to be probably the weak spot if there is one. But anyway, we'll talk about that when we're up and on the rig in just a moment. But that is the QR2 Lite. There you go. Now, my understanding, and by all means jump on their website, by the time you guys are seeing this, as I said, this all should be live on their website, so you'll be able to see for yourself. So my understanding is that if you buy a CSL series steering wheel, you'll have the option at this point of choosing whether you want to have the QR1 simplified quick release like what you see here, or the QR2 Lite quick release. You should have the option of the two without there being any additional cost if you want to go with the QR2. Likewise with the Club Sport series, again, you'll have the option to choose whether you want the QR1 or the QR2, but I don't believe it's going to cost any extra for the adapter. But again, that's my understanding recording this ahead of time, so just jump on their website and fact check that one. Now, the other quick thing to be aware of here in terms of compatibility when it comes to the wheel side is that this upgrade path is only going to be available for the V2 style wheels.
Got caught on the wall.
Interchangeable quick release. So just to give you an idea here, you can see on this particular Universal Hub V2, we've got bolts that allow us to remove the quick release, which is basically just this part here that you guys saw earlier. On some of the earlier V1 wheels, and they did transition across from this a number of years ago now, so this shouldn't affect the majority of you guys, but if you do have any old legacy wheels that are designed like this, with the quick release actually integrated into the hub, unfortunately there isn't going to be an upgrade path available for those wheels. So if you do have a bunch of these wheels and you are looking at upgrading, I would recommend trying to sell them as quickly as you can before this new QR2 system really catches on and starts becoming mainstream, because the value of these wheels will drop, in my opinion, pretty quickly once Fanatec products are actually shipping with the QR2 as the default stem on their motor shaft. So yeah, just be aware of that too. But look, I think that's pretty much everything you guys need to be aware of in terms of pricing and compatibility. As I said earlier, there will be some discount packages and upgrade paths available. We don't have the details on those at the time we're recording this, so just jump on their website to make sure that that is all clarified for you. So for the time being, if you're buying a Fnatic wheelbase, it will still be shipping with the QR1 style stem. At some point over the next 1 to 2 years, they will transition across so that all the bases that they're selling will come pre-installed with the QR2 style stem. I don't have any more details on exactly how that transition is going to look and at what point we can expect to start receiving that, but I'm sure that they'll communicate and make that clear through their own communications as well. But as it stands right now, if you buy a steering wheel, you'll have the option of choosing whether you want to have a QR1 or QR2 on the wheel side. If you're buying a wheelbase, it will still come with the QR1 stem, so you will need to purchase the QR2 as an optional upgrade on top of that if you wish to use the QR2 ecosystem. Okay, so there was definitely a lot to get through there in terms of how upgrade paths and things are going to work. So hopefully you're still with me. I'm going to get into the juicy stuff now and explain exactly how this quick release works and what makes it different.
He was trying to kill me
in the past. So this is the motor side part of the shaft, and as you can see, it plugs in exactly the same way as the previous QR1 did. Plugs into the USB-C port internally, and I'll run you through that process a little later on. And then for your DD1, DD2, you can see again, this is the shaft that comes as standard, and then this is the replacement shaft. So it's a case of just undoing it, sliding it out, and we'll show you that later on as well. So how this actually works in terms of mating with your wheel, what you've got here is a somewhat conical shape on the front. This is actually derived from a Cron-Tech quick release system, I believe, which is something that's been widely used in motorsport for quite some time now. And then on the wheel side here, you've got a matching conical shape in this CNC machined area here, remembering again that they are both CNC machined. It's just that this is CNC machined cast aluminium, and this is CNC machined entirely from the billet block, as we described before. But you've got these two rods here, which are spring-loaded. As you pull the mechanism back here, you can see those retract, and that locks in to the grooves on the stem, as you see here. Now, the cool thing is that if you remember back on the previous quick release, when you installed the wheel onto the shaft, you actually had to pull or retract the collar around here and then pop it on and let go of it. With the new quick release, you actually don't need to pull on that collar when you install it. So all you need to do is, and I'll make sure I have this oriented the right way so I don't damage things, but you can see it's got a little bit of a taper on the top here. So all you need to do is just push it in, and it actually just slots in like so. And that was really easy, even without the leverage of having a wheel in my hands. Then to release it again, just like with the old system, you pull on the collar and it slides out like so. Now, the first few mating cycles are still a little bit stiff, but it does loosen up quite quickly after that. Hopefully nobody's going to smack themselves in the face, like is almost like an initiation with the QR1 quick release system. I know I did it the very first time I pulled my wheel off. I smacked myself in the nose and nearly broke my nose with the wheel. If you've ever owned a Fnatic wheel with the Club Sport QR1 quick release, you know exactly what I'm talking about and have probably done the same thing. So that's the basic concept on how it works. Now, in terms of the electrical interface, you may have noticed that internally here, the pin assemblies are actually identical, and that goes for the DD1 and DD2 version as well. So it's actually really clever what they've done here. They've allowed the same pin assembly to actually interface so that you don't need to change any wiring or anything like that on the wheel side. Now, there is a little plastic adapter which you will need to change on the back of this, and we'll show you that when we get into the assembly process in just a minute. But you can see internally, the pin assembly is exactly the same. As this slides on, again, because of that conical shape, it guides the pins into the right alignment. By the time they actually interface with this, they're in exactly the right position. So it slides in and there are no issues at all. So yeah, it's actually quite impressive to me how they've managed to take a design which is now, you know, very, very old and come up with a way to improve that design without making it unnecessarily complex in terms of how you actually have to upgrade your wheels. So that is the basic design of how things work. Let's now move across and talk about how we actually install these guys on the wheelbases, and then we'll talk about upgrading the wheels, and we'll jump over on the rig and give it all a try. So let's run you through the upgrade process now for a CSL DD or GT DD Pro, as we have on the table here. Now, inside the box for the Type C motor side QR2 assembly, we have a replacement collar, a little Allen key, as well as some nice, clearly drawn, I would say, rather than written instructions. It's all kind of in a picture form, but it does give you a clear understanding of what you need to do. One little issue that I do have here, and it's not a big deal, I don't think, but I would love to have seen them include, you can see here, it does tell you that the maximum amount of torque that you should apply to the collar is 8 newtons. You don't have any way of actually knowing what amount of force you're putting on there. They only include a little Allen key. I would have loved for them to include a little torque wrench like this little guy here. This actually came in the box with a bike that I bought for my little boy a couple of weeks ago, and I was really impressed by it. You can see it's just got a little gauge here, which allows you to go all the way up to 10 newtons. So I'm probably actually going to use this to install this. Now, the reason why I call that out as being important is we have seen, and I haven't experienced it myself on either my CSL DD or my GT DD Pro, we have seen a few instances of people finding that the motor shaft actually works its way loose over time, slides out from the assembly, and the USB-C connection in the back disconnects, and that can cause the wheel to disconnect and become unreliable inside the game. So look, I do think they probably are going to see a few extra warranty claims or customer service inquiries from people that are having issues with disconnections after they've tried to do this upgrade, simply because people are going to either be over or under torquing this, you know, trying to guess what 8 newton. Okay, that actually does have a more satisfying click to it when you put the wheel on. One of the things that I wasn't a huge fan of with the other one was that it didn't have that clunk when you plug it in. It's just different. It's not a problem, but that actually was a little bit more satisfying. I'll do it again in just a minute, but let's enable torque here, and that is absolutely
off with her head.
I'm actually feeling a little bit less movement overall with this than what I did on the CSL DD. I'd say that's again just down to that flex in the shaft itself. But as far as the quick release is concerned, yeah, there's nothing going on there at all. That's absolutely solid. Let's just spin that around. So I'm fighting all the time, but yeah. You can see the base moves up and down a tiny bit as I really pull up and down on the wheel, but yeah, there's no flex in that shaft and the quick release at all. You can see a little bit of movement in the wheel once again, but that is absolutely solid. I'm just going to chuck the Club Sport wheel on quickly too for you guys, just for the sake of completeness. So plug that in. Actually, did it damage it at all? No, there's a little bit of a scuff there. Yeah. So it is gonna show signs of wear over time, unfortunately. But I mean, that's gonna happen. Let's plug this guy in. Yep. So that's in. Yeah. Same deal. No movement there at all. That is just as solid as any other quick release that I've ever used. I'd put that right up there with my Zero Play quick release, the VRS quick release, for example, which uses a similar Crontek style. The Acertec quick release is really solid as well. The CMQ SQR as well, that's really solid. Yeah, this is every bit as good in terms of rigidity. So just for the sake of completeness, let's chuck the QR2 Lite on the DD1, DD2. Just keep in mind here that if you are using the QR2 Lite on a DD1, DD2, you will be limited to low torque mode, not a limitation on the GT DD Pro or CSL DD. So let's put it on in exactly the same manner. I don't expect to see any significant differences here, but just so you guys can see for yourselves. But yeah, exactly the same observations as we had with the CSL DD. A little bit less overall perceivable flex because we don't have that little bit of movement in the shaft, but otherwise, pretty much exactly the same. Okay guys, so if you're still with us, this is the point in the video now where I'm going to share my subjective opinions having used this product for a couple of days now. So we are planning on doing some more extended testing over time, of course, and we will of course let you guys know if we do run into any unforeseen issues. But yeah, if you're after the objective information so you can make your own judgment, I know a lot of people do skip straight to the conclusion, so definitely do go back if you have skipped straight here to see, you know, how we've reached these conclusions. Because from this point onwards, it is purely just going to be my own opinion based on the experience that I've had, and of course your experience may be different. Now I also just want to quickly pause here as well to ask a favor of you guys too. If you have found this video useful up until this point, please do jump down below and hit that subscribe button and the thumbs up button. Believe it or not, only about 30% of the people that watch our videos are actually subscribed to the channel, and subscribing is a really fantastic
He got
way.
a
Even though I know
collab.
it doesn't make a big difference to your experience, it does make a big difference to how YouTube actually pushes out the content to other sim racers. So if you find what we do valuable and you think that it could be beneficial to fellow sim racers, then that is an awesome way of helping support our work and making sure that more people see our content. So we really do appreciate your support with that. But let's move on now
Not
into
the
driving
result I was
experience
going
and
for.
my conclusions. Now, with the QR1 system previously, I've always kind of said that, you know, you don't notice the flex necessarily when you're driving, but it is definitely there if it's something that you pay attention to or, you know, look for. Now, that has always been a reason why I've said, you know, even though Fanatec does have a really well-established ecosystem, they've got a really large and mature, you know, selection of wheels, they've got really good compatibility with consoles, and just general ease of use is generally pretty good with Fanatec compared to a lot of other brands that we've compared with over the years. that QR1 and the flex that's present there has always been a reason why I've sort of said, you know, maybe you guys should look elsewhere if that's something that you think is likely to bother you. So I think the big question for me going into this was, you know, does this new QR2 system do away with that issue entirely? Is that no longer a reason to consider another brand if you're happy otherwise within the Fnatic ecosystem? So that's really where I've been paying the majority of my attention in terms of what I was looking for in the driving experience. And I'm happy to say that, honestly, across the entire board here, with all 3 of the wheel side quick releases and both of the CSL GT DD Pro and the DD1 DD2 motor stems, it absolutely has improved it to the point where I would put it on par with, say, the likes of the VRS, the you know, the Zero Play quick release, the Mozza quick release, Sim Magic quick release, which has always been, in my opinion, the best in the market when it comes to OEM quick releases, at least. This absolutely does put it on par with that. I would say that the light version is more likely to have issues over time just because of the nature of its design. As I said, we haven't done long-term testing on this guy yet, so I can't really comment on that. We haven't run into any problems so far, but I do have a few concerns just about the potential of cracking around where these bolts are, because even though there is a lot of reinforcement there, it's nowhere near as strong fundamentally as what you have with the metal versions of the quick release. We'll find out over time. I'm sure a lot of people are going to buy this one, and you know, this is something that's going to be shipping with all of their CSL wheels, you know, into the future as well. So if there are problems, it's going to come very quickly apparent. But look, the build quality on this guy, you know, it is nice and strong, it is nice and rigid, and it definitely does make a more than noticeable improvement on the driving experience. You guys can see for yourself in the driving footage, you know, how much the wheel was moving previously compared to now, and how that manifests itself in terms of the actual driving experience. You do feel more granular detail in the force feedback. You do feel more connected to the car overall, and those are both things that, you know, if you're paying a lot of money for a direct drive wheelbase, you want to be getting as much detail as you possibly can. And I did honestly feel an improvement in the granular detail in the force feedback across the board with all 3 I was wondering whether it would be different on this guy. But I can tell you that when I switched between the light version and the standard version on that P1 wheel, there wasn't really a discernible difference in the amount of flex or the detail that I was feeling whatsoever. So I think it's as simple as saying that the quality of the light version is about on par from what you would expect from one of the wheels in the CSL range anyway. So I'd say that it's it's well designed, but definitely doesn't have the same user experience and quality feel. Just little things like retracting the collar, for example, just feel more clunky on this than they do with the metal version, but you expect that for, you know, such a significant drop in price. The important thing though is that it is far, far, far more rigid in terms of what it communicates through to your hands in terms of force feedback compared to the QR1 light. So definitely a significant improvement. Now when it comes to the metal ones, look, really not a whole lot to add on what we've already covered earlier on in the video. There is no difference, at least to me and what I feel, in the force feedback between the Pro version and the standard version. The Pro version does feel that little bit nicer to slip on due to that PTFE coating that we described earlier. But in terms of the actual driving experience, once it's made it up to the stem, no difference at all, no additional flex or anything like that. So I'd stand by what I said earlier on the video. If you want to be completely baller and just have the best of the best, then by all means get the Pro, but don't expect that you're going to be getting a significantly different experience with the Pro over what you get with the standard. So in my opinion, the standard is probably what you should be spending your money on as opposed to the Pro for any wheel within the club sport or the podium range. Maybe just if you're stepping up to something like the Porsche GT3R wheel that's a lot more expensive, you might want to consider spending the extra for something like this, just so it looks the part. But really, other than aesthetics, there's not a significant difference between the two. So across all the tests that we did, the biggest improvement was between the simplified quick release and the new light version. That was where we saw the biggest difference in the driving experience. That said though, there was still a very significant and noticeable improvement with both of the metal quick releases. Again, remembering that the experience between the two of them in terms of what it's like to drive with is identical. So no real reason, no compelling reason anyway to upgrade to the Pro over the standard. But comparing that to the old Club Sport quick release, it does do away with that metal to metal clicking sound. It does do away with that clunking sound that you get on rapid change of directions with this guy too. And even with the retainer screw installed, I did personally find with these old style quick releases, there was often still a little bit of rocking from side to side that you could notice if you really paid attention. Absolutely nothing like that to speak of whatsoever.
Now you left the hill,
so regardless of whether you're looking to upgrade or invest in a light version or a standard over the Club Sport quick release, QR1 style, I would say, yeah, definitely it's achieving what it set out to achieve, and it definitely makes a significant and noticeable improvement in every scenario, basically. So without rambling on too much here, although I may have already done that, look, basically what it comes down to is this. The QR1 was a definite reason to consider other brands over the Fnatic ecosystem in the past. With the QR2 system now, at least in terms of the rigidity, I'd say we're looking at a quick release, which is on par with the likes of, say, your SimuCube SQR, your Acertech quick release, your SimMagic, your Moza, and so forth. So no longer a reason, I would say, to consider other brands. So if you like what the Fnatic ecosystem has to offer otherwise, then definitely worth your consideration. If not, then, you know, it's not really a point of contention anymore, which I guess is as much as you could possibly ask for in terms of, you know, what would...
Please don't say anything. Please just keep it to yourself, whatever it is. Oh. Thought you had an idea. Like for a smartphone?
An app that all the people could download and we make millions.
It's just hard to come up with, man. It's like catching lightning in a bottle.
I already got that.
You got what? Really? What's the idea?
No idea. I got actual lightning in the bottle.
No, Levi, that's just a phrase.
Lightning in a bottle. Flip.
That's crazy, son. Where'd you get that?
Some old Chinese man sold it to me years ago.
I mean, that's some supernatural, man.
Man, all it does is this.
I got it.
But seriously, man, would it be like an app that reminds you when your favorite television shows are on?
No! We gotta address this crazy-ass bottle that you got.
What bottle?
What bottle? The bottle with the lightning.
All right.
You still on that?
Yes. How does it work?
Cedric, I don't know. It's the classic lightning in the bottle guy.
Classic.
You just open it up.
Okay, you know what? You shouldn't have this. This belongs to the military or something.
But that app, though.
No, we don't need the app. You got the goose that laid the golden egg.
How do you know about honkers?
What? This mother...
Honkers, get in on this app idea. You like it?
Yeah, he got a goddamn golden egg.
Honkers here is the cat's pajamas.
I love Key and Peele.
No, please don't.
I want to show you something.
Whatever it is, I don't want to see it. I already know what it is.
It ain't what you think.
Well, what I think it is a pair of cat's pajamas.
These are for honkers to wear.
The what?
The little neck in there.
The neck. How you gonna fit his head through this with the orange hump?
Damn, bro, what the fuck are you doing?
What the fuck up, bro?
Okay.
Hey, you a nigger, damn
Okay. It's clear that this is a crazy house. So I gotta go. You over here talking about geese with golden eggs and feline sleepwear.
Starts in 5. Man, Cedric, you need to get off your high horse, man. 1. Speed I just
pass.
thought of a name for you.
Fire! Gangla!
Double kill.
Winner! They were dealing. I didn't want to get in.
And that's what we're here to say, is that we are the new Black Panther Party.
What's the biggest problem facing the movement?
Well, you know, we're supposed to be in this era of so-called post-racial harmony with all people in America, but us blacks are being murdered all over the place, and we get the same treatment time and time again. We're not even second-class citizens. We third class. Stand up, Black America, and declare to white America that we aren't gonna take this no more, okay?
Why come out?
We're not gonna take it. No, we ain't gonna take it. We're not gonna take it anymore.
It's time to take back. It's time for us to fight back. And we don't take your phony words anymore. We're not gonna do it. We want concrete results. You know, you hear what we're saying to you? United Snakes of America? What are you supposed to do when the whole world is watching and no one is saying anything? We will not be silent.
Okay, you, sir. Anything you wanted to say?
Bingo, I'm good.
Kilos, 100%, pure grade Afghani heroin.
$100,000 US.
Hold up.
You know, we're gonna do a straight count on this right now.
Count it.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Should probably do it fast so we don't make our friends here wait.
20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 20, 40, 60, 80, 200.
You know what? I'm fast.
20,
Okay, I'll take care of that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Why are you doing piles of 9?
It's faster than 10s. Oh, really? I do my 9s 10 times and then I do an extra pile of 10.
Fast. Okay. Victory. You know, we should probably both be counting.
Oh, well, let's get to it. That's double trouble. All right.
And 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 29, 60. Hey, I'm sorry. Could you do something like over there, please? It's a little distracting.
Oh, you know what?
What's that?
I got it. We could time me. Okay, we time me counting out 1,000. We take that time, and then we just count money for that time times 100.
¿Qué hacen estos pendejos?
No, I got it. This is it right here. I'm gonna do a web search for a picture of $100,000. Okay. Then, you know, we'll know what it's supposed to look like, and then we can arrange our money to look exactly like it. And see, here, hey, here we go. Right here, look. I mean, damn, that looks just like a lot like our money. I think we got $100,000 here, folks. I think we made it.
That is our money. I'm sorry. Earlier, when we were counting, I took a picture of our money so I could upload it on Yahoo Answers.
Oh, damn.
That's right there. I just wanted to see if anyone could verify what $100,000 looked like. Oh, you got it.
What was I thinking? I got it, man.
Go.
I got it.
What the hell are you doing, man?
I was gonna try to Rain Man it.
Well, that's a plan right there.
That's right. Okay, yeah, here we go. Here we go. Yep. I got that. 2046. 99,980.
Oye, se me olvidó darles uno. Ay.
Oh, you got it.
I actually pressed it already. Huh? The walk button, I pressed it.
Couldn't hurt to press it again.
But it won't help. I mean, I pressed it already, right? It's already done. You don't think I didn't press it?
No, I wasn't saying that.
Good, because I most certainly did press it. Just have to wait for it to change.
So I'm like late for work, so I'm just gonna press it.
What for? Why would you do something that's already done? I mean, I just think that that's crazy, right?
Because if I don't, it will cause anxiety, bro.
You wouldn't suit up and try to kill Bin Laden again. It's done. I have killed the Bin Laden of pressing his
Milsim.
button.
How long ago did you press it?
What do you think? I've been standing here for days. I just pressed it right as you walked up.
Are you sure you pressed it?
Am I sure I pressed it? It's how could I miss it? Rats know how to press buttons. You think I'm dumber than a rat?
No, nobody's saying anything like that.
It's gonna change. Just wait. It's because I pressed it already.
Okay, no offense. I'm just gonna press it.
What would you do that for? This is precision equipment designed by people with engineering degrees. It will work. I pressed it, sir. I pressed the button.
While we've been standing here, the light cycle has gone by twice, okay? I'm not saying you didn't press it. I'm just saying maybe it didn't work.
If it didn't work for me, why in the world would it work for you? You think that it would change faster if you pressed it? You think the light doesn't like me or something? Or do you think that this particular button was designed so that it only works after the second time that it's been pressed? Because that's lunacy, okay? Do you understand?
Actually, no, it's not.
Balls off on this one, okay?
Engineers know that people like pressing buttons.
Okay, fine.
And in some cities,
stand here.
every press is counted. Because it's assumed that that each passenger or each pedestrian.
Hold him up to do it. No, actually, I already pressed the button.
Rick Nicholsby reporting live from a gruesome scene.
It's also why they count how many cars go over a road, so they can know.
Police confirmed that cyanide-laced cherry Kool-Aid was also on the premises. Excuse me, hi, Rick Nicholsby, Channel 6. Hi, are you two from the neighborhood?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, were you two members of the cult that lived here?
What cult? Was this a cult? I had no idea this was a cult.
Aww.
The term cult is a little judgmental.
I would say the same thing, yeah.
Not knowing the full doctrine.
Well, apparently they believe that there was a spaceship waiting for them behind the moon.
Okay, well, you know, that still is really possible. I mean, it's possible, right? I mean, who knows what is out there in the universe?
Woo!
Well, it appears they killed themselves in order to board the ship.
Right,
right
over
over
the
the
edge.
edge.
Disagreed with them right there, or would have. We would have disagreed with them had we been there on our departure day. Their departure day, which is the day that they did this. I mean, that's what you could call it if you wanted to. But I ain't in no cult.
No, I mean, what
I ain't
I
in no
always
cult.
wondered is how, or am starting to wonder since you brought this to our attention, why, if there was a spaceship in the sky, why wouldn't it just beam us up? Beam them up.
Right, just beam them up. Why can't you just beam them up alive? Why you gotta be dead to get beamed up? You know what I'm saying? I've been saying that for weeks, seconds. Because you, Rick Nicholsby, you told us that, you know, and that's how I knew.
Hey, that is a pretty good
You
argument.
said it. I didn't know anything about it until you said it, because I ain't in no cult.
Okay, well then why would someone join a cult?
Charismatic leadership, you know, like a compelling person. Taco Tuesday. I mean, hypothetically, they could have had tacos on Tuesday, which would have been a draw. I mean, that would have been a plus.
Okay, so this is a tragic day for this community and for the members of the Quest for Earthly Truth. I'm Rick Nicholsby, reporting.
Drink the Kool-Aid.
Best comic book adaptation to film, hands down, no argument.
See you later, girls. All right.
Oh, yeah.
I know I'm in the minority here, but I don't really like the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. I don't. I really just feel like they're overrated.
Okay.
Well, that's just an opinion. You see, that's why I prefaced it by saying I know I'm in the minority.
Or
You know what? No. Not really. It's not awkward, at least not until you said awkward. Now it's awkward because of what you said.
Anyway.
Anyway what? Anyway what? Really, because when you say anyway, then you have to follow it up with an actual contribution to the conversation we're having.
Yikes.
No, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. There's no yikes, and the reason why there's no yikes is because there's nothing scary about this situation, okay? It's a very low-stakes situation.
All right.
No, not all right. Come here. No, don't look at him. Don't look at either of those guys. Look at me, all right? All right what? Because after you say all right, you have to follow that up with something. Don't do it. Don't look at them. Do not look at them. No, do not look at them. Do not look at them. Don't
tell us how you really feel.
You know what? I'll tell you how I really feel. Listen, I really feel like you're an asshole who has nothing interesting to say. So what? Ow. No, don't look at him. Come here. Turn it right here. Tell me an opinion that you have about something. Just one opinion that you have about anything at all. Just share an opinion. Anything. Share an opinion. Share an opinion. Share an opinion. Share an opinion right now. Just off the top of your head. Share an opinion. Anything. Just one opinion. That's all I'm asking. Share one opinion right now. Share.
I don't have an opinion, and that's why I just like everything that everyone else likes in pop culture. Oh.
I gotta get off. My mom's dropping by, so I will talk to y'all tomorrow. Have a good